Dear viewers, today I bring you a story about an orphan girl who is going through difficult circumstances. I hope you like it. In an atmosphere full of happiness, the passionate child Hanan lived in the arms of her generous parents, in a wooden hut in the middle of the forest, taking care of the animals and poultry, running between the fields, jumping and frolicking. Despite the harshness of the hut in which she lived, the illness of her kind mother worsened, and the latter's thoughts also became preoccupied with the fate of her only daughter, while she was on her sickbed. If something bad happened to her or she died, who would she leave her to? One day, while she was playing and running in the fields as usual, time betrayed her, and she lost the most precious thing she had, her mother, who left her alone in her childhood, deprived and marginalized, and time consumed her tenderness. Her father thought of taking her hand and being kind to her. One harsh winter night, her father married an evil woman, thinking that she would take care of his only daughter. However, this vile woman had a hateful look towards her while she was still a child, so the enmity towards the girl grew. In her husband's absence while he was working, the poor girl concealed her sorrows and suffering and did not tell her father when he returned, in order to preserve his happiness and his home. A year passed after the marriage, and the evil woman gave birth to a girl named Reem. Hanan feels sorry for Reem and shares food with her, and plays with her from time to time, as if she is searching for something she cannot express through her treatment of her counterpart. One day, Hanan woke up to the news of her father's passing, whom she used to praise and thank. She cried over her father and remembered her mother's qualities. She felt sad for them, and from here her life changed from happiness in the embrace of her parents to deprivation with the ugly mirror.
After her father's death, the evil mirror threw the orphan girl Hanan into the animal stable where she lived and slept every day, without mercy or compassion.
The old woman began to advise her daughter with tender steps, and the goodness that brought them together disappeared. At this very stage, the orphan girl felt the loneliness and misery that awaited her. The miserable girl began to keep things inside her chest and not reveal them to anyone. She lived waiting for a future full of misery on the path of this evil old woman. She knew very well that she would face thresholds covered with thorns. She had no choice but to be patient and obey to get rid of the treachery and deception of the evil woman. From here, her adventure with life would begin. One winter morning, Hanan was awakened by her stepmother screaming as she woke her up. "Wake up, you fool! Wash your face, put on your coat, bring fresh grapes and don't go home without them. Do you understand?" The little girl carried the basket and went out into the forest, wiping her tears and her cheeks, wondering at the same time about the forced and confusing The evil woman sat with her spoiled daughter Reem, who had the same evil, hateful, selfish and angry traits as her mother. They were talking about the girl's fate, thinking that she would not survive this time. The girl continued walking with steady, heavy steps, falling sometimes and getting up other times without despair or boredom. She continued to cut the path with determination and steadfastness. As she entered the forest, she began to feel afraid and imagined that the trees had turned into ghosts. Suddenly, she saw a glowing light on the horizon, and it was the ghost of winter in the form of an old man with a white beard and handsome features. He asked her why she was crying and coming in such cold weather. She was silent and retreated from the intensity of fear, and when her mind calmed down, she took courage and then told him her story, hoping for his help. The ghost disappeared and went to meet his 3 friends, and during the moments of consultation, Winter told the story of a desperate girl who wanted to pick grapes in season. The 4 seasons were pained by what happened to her and decided to help the good girl. Then he returned to her with his friends, carrying hope for her. Then winter gave up its place to its friend spring. The snow melted, the clouds disappeared, and a warm sun shone, filling the place. A gentle breeze blew, refreshing her and filling her soul with happiness and joy. Then the trees and vineyards blossomed, and the earth was covered with greenery. Before he left, Spring advised her.
My daughter, be kind as this weather is kind, and strive to be loyal to people, and be peaceful, for I have learned that God is with the oppressed against the oppressor, and I advise you to give charity before you leave it.
She enjoyed its picturesque views. The land around her was beautiful in its green dress. Spring had covered it with its fragrant roses, and decorated it with its fragrant flowers. Some bright flowers played on its side with their sweet scent. The beholder cannot be satisfied with them, and the mind cannot be satisfied with them, with running irrigation canals, distant gardens, and birds hovering between the branches, circling, filling the world with singing in it, love and serenity. Spring had come to her and promised her with its beautiful atmosphere, smiling to its friend Summer, to bring joy to the heart of the good girl. Hanan forgot the cruelty of the wicked woman, and his beauty distracted her from everything else, so she turned her head to the right and saw the wonder of wonders, a ripe vine with low-hanging green fruits, embroidered with pure white and bright yellow, its leaves shiny and attractive, pleasing to the beholder. She walked among those scenes, admiring and fascinated by them, then headed towards a rock, climbed on top of it to pick bunches of grapes, contenting herself with a few of them, and he began to urge her with his advice.
My little girl, you must not be arrogant, and be good to your neighbor, guest, passerby, poor, and orphan. Adhere to good morals, be honest in your speech, and stay away from gossip. Finally,
after he gave her wisdom and advice, the girl was very pleased. Then the ghost of Summer shook hands with his friend Autumn, advising him to take care of the girl. He brought her goodness and blessings, carrying with him the winds that clapped the branches of the trees, and the clouds gathered, accompanied by heavy rains, and as a result the leaves withered and began to fall, and watered the dry ground, and while she was standing contemplating the view, the water began to seep into her worn-out shoes without her caring about it, and at that moment she thanked the Creator for his many blessings. The ghost kept talking to her and giving her kind words to help her in her life and keep her away from despair. Life is beautiful and nature is more beautiful.
Be, my little girl, like a good seed that, when planted, grows and ripens, benefiting its owner and others as charity. Always hasten to do good. The ghost kept talking to her and giving her kind words to help her in her life and keep her away from despair. Life is beautiful and nature is more beautiful.
It wasn't long before nature returned once again in her pure white winter clothes. The winter ghost addressed her.
My kind daughter, be kind, for your heart is as white as the snow that knows no hatred. Be patient and help those who need your help. When she was about to leave, he said to her, all of this did not last long, Hanan, but it was in the blink of an eye so that you would not feel sad and be thrown out of the house. The ghost's help to you is nothing but a gift to your kind heart.
The kind girl thanked the four seasons for their generosity and help, and returned to the hut safely. On her way back to the hut, she found her stepmother waiting for her. She ran towards her and violently took the basket from her. As soon as she saw the fresh bunches of grapes, she was astonished and said to her,
"Where did you get this from?"
The poor girl answered humbly that she had met the four seasons and helped her. She told her whole story, but the old woman mocked her words and was not convinced by them. She replied sarcastically,
"Where will I get grapes if I do not seek help from my dear friends?"
At that moment, the old woman had an idea to harvest more of them in a season where they are not available, and sell them to obtain a huge fortune. She began to mutter,
"I will not send that ugly girl because she does not bring me many of them," thinking that the little girl hates her. "This time, I will send my dear, spoiled daughter, Reem, to harvest a large basket of fresh grapes for me, considering her little girl to be clever and agile."
The wicked woman called her daughter Reem and said to her,
"Carry the basket and go to the forest."
The little girl dropped the basket and started crying and saying,
No, no, I will not go. I am afraid to go to the forest.
The mother shouted at her daughter,
You will go against your will.
and she pushed her outside forcefully.
Go and come back with abundant grapes so that we can become rich.
The arrogant girl Reem went deep into the forest. At that moment, the winter ghost ordered the icy wind to blow, carrying snow. The girl Reem fainted and fell to the ground from the severe cold, and piles of snow piled up on her. When her daughter was late, her mother could not rest, so she asked the orphan girl to look for her. They went out and began searching in the depths of the forest. They separated so that it would be easier to find her. Hanan began to walk with pure faith in her kind heart, praying to God to guide her to the right path so she could find the reckless girl. She found a large pile of snow in front of her. She began to crumble it and saw Reem's face unconscious. She called out loudly to her stepmother, and they immediately carried her to the hut. The girl was in critical condition. Hanan was affected by her sister's condition, and felt sorry for her and her mother's actions. She asked her stepmother to go to the village next to the forest to bring a doctor, and she gave her permission. After an hour they both arrived home. The doctor examined her and wrote her a prescription for medicine. He then ordered her to keep warm, not to expose herself to the cold, and to eat well until her health improved and she was completely cured. The evil woman regretted her bad behavior towards Hanan, and her excessive greed that almost cost her only daughter her life. She realized then that she was wrong, that life is give and take, and that contentment is an everlasting treasure. She learned all this lesson from an orphan girl who knows the taste of life and happiness. She asked Hanan to forgive her for her treatment. She was very happy because her stepmother learned a lesson that she will never forget. Since that day, Hanan, her stepmother, and Reem have lived happily.